Hey, it's your open source advocate and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to do something with the Raspberry Pi. This is a Pi 3B. It has wireless built in, but you don't have to use this model. You could probably even use a Raspberry Pi Zero if you really got after it. But we're going to use a Raspberry Pi 3 today, and we're going to build an access point, actually a wireless access point for the network. It's really great. It's some really simple software to get installed, so we're going to get started here in just a minute. You'll also need either a micro SD card or a regular SD card, depending on the model of Raspberry Pi that you're using, and then a computer to burn the initial image that we want. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is want to go to the RaspAP website. So it's raspap.com, raspap.com. And when you get there, you'll see there's a product called the RaspAP Web GUI. The other thing we want to get is a Raspbian distro. And I'll put all the links in the show notes. So basically, you're going to come to the Raspberry Pi website, you're going to look for Raspbian, and you want to get Raspbian Buster Lite. So you can either do that through the torrent or you can download the zip file. Either one, it doesn't really matter which one you grab. Just make sure you grab one of those. And once you've grabbed it, you're just going to unzip that file so that you have the image file, and then we're going to burn that using Etcher to our SD card. So go ahead and get that downloaded and then come back. In order to burn this to the SD card, we're going to use a tool called Balena Etcher, and you can find this really easily online. Balena Etcher, I believe it's at balena.io, and then you can look for Etcher. When you get this, it runs on Windows, Mac, Linux. It's really a great little tool for burning images to USB drives, to SD cards, it doesn't matter. So when you're ready, you want to get your SD card prepared, and you can either use an adapter like a USB adapter, or you can use one of these SD to micro SD card adapters, but you need to pop that into your machine wherever it fits, however you can get it into the computer that you're going to use for burning this initial image. And mine's going to pop open a couple of different folders here. I want to install it. Once that's installed, you're going to click on this button right here to go select your image. And we want this 2019 Buster Lite image, so I'm just going to double click that guy. And then you're going to go here and make sure you pick your SD card. You want to make sure you pick the right thing. Now Balena's pretty good. It'll only find like external hard drives and things, but if you have a backup drive connected like I do, you don't want to erase that by accident. So in this case, I want this 32 gigabyte drive. That's the SD card that I'm using. And then I'm going to click continue. Just make sure that's the one that has a check mark next to it. And then finally, you're going to click on this flash button, and it's going to prompt you for your password. Let that go, and it's going to flash, and then we'll be back. Alright, when you see that Balena has come back to this screen, you're pretty much done with Etcher. So you can just close it out. And then we need to go and actually, we're not done with our SD card, so don't eject it just yet. You actually want to open up your File Explorer or whatever you're using for your system. So in this case, I'm using Linux. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And right here, you'll see that I have a couple of ejected drives, and that's the drives that it just burned. There should be one that says root FS and one that says boot. So we want to remount boot. So on this system, you just click on it and it'll remount. And inside this little boot drive, we need to make a couple of changes. So actually a couple of additions. So I'm just going to right click. You can do this in whatever way makes sense for you. And then I'm going to go to create document empty file, which is exactly what I want. And I'm just going to type in lowercase SSH. I'm just going to hit enter. You don't put anything in that file. You don't put a file extension on it, nothing like that. The next one we need is one that will actually set up my wireless from the get-go for my Wi-Fi network. You don't have to do this, but if you're doing this wirelessly, then you'll want this up front. If you can plug into Ethernet, it's going to be much better. And that's the way that I'm actually going to do the install of the software. But first, I want to make sure that I have access wirelessly if I need it. So I'm going to go over here to my documents, and I have this file called wpasupplicant.conf, and again I'll put all of this stuff in the description for you. I'm just going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm just going to open it up in a text editor. And this is a pretty straightforward file, but this tells the system what you want it to set up for the wireless. So I'm going to have the password blurred out here for my wireless network, but this is your password for your wireless network. This is the SSID for your wireless network that you might have going right now. First, you want to have country equals the 2-character definition for your country. So if you're not in the US, then you would put UK or CA or MX, just depending on where you live. You need to put the two-character abbreviation for your country. This line is the same every time, so the CTRL underscore interface equals capital DIR equals /var /bin var /run /WPA underscore supplicant, and then space all caps group equals lowercase netdev. Next line says update underscore config equals 1, and then finally you come to this last line where it says network equals, and then it's an object. So you just create an object and you define your network SSID and your network password, and then close it off and save that file as WPA underscore supplicant.conf. So I just wanted you to see what that file looks like. I'm just going to copy that file, and then I'm going to go back to my boot, and I'm going to paste that file into the boot section. Alright, I'm done with boot now, so I can eject it. Can close that, and I'm going to go ahead and just pop out that card. At this point, I'm going to connect up my Raspberry Pi. I'm going to connect it to Ethernet as well, and let it boot up. And I'm going to give it about 3 or 4 minutes because it does some initial things the first time you boot up a Raspbian Lite. So be patient when you start it up. Just kind of watch the lights on the front of it, and if they're blinking, that's a good sign. Once we get it all booted up, then we're going to come back and start doing some things that are here on their RaspAP page for instructions. They do give you screenshots of what it looks like. If you just keep scrolling down, you'll get to the instructions section, and you just kind of want to follow these instructions to get everything set up the way that it needs to be set up. So let me go get this plugged up, and then we'll come back and keep going. Alright, so I've got the Raspberry Pi all set up. I've got it plugged into my Ethernet, and it has been running for a few minutes. So I'm going to use Angry IP Scanner, which I talked about in last week's video. So I'll leave a link for that down in the description if you'd like to look at it, and I'll create a little card that should pop up somewhere up in the upper right. And we'll see if you want to watch that one as well if you haven't seen it yet. This is a really great tool for basically discovering devices on your network and what their IPs and ports are. So I have this one set, and if you want to look at it here, it's only going to look for the live hosts, which kind of keeps it from showing everything that it tries to ping. I don't have it scanning for specific ports, but we'll actually set it to scan for port 22 because I want to SSH into the device, and then we'll hit start. Alright, it finished up, and right here we can see that there are 2 devices found, or actually 2 different connections found, called Raspberry Pi.local. This is because I have the wireless setup and the wired setup, and I don't know which is which at this point, but they both have port 22 open, so I just need to connect to them and see which is which, and then we'll get started on figuring out what we want to do with this device here. Alright, so we're going to do SSH Pi at 192.168.7.209 here, and it's probably going to tell me that I've already got this in my hosts file because I've done this before, so it may tell me I need to get rid of it first. Let's see. Nope, it's okay. Alright, and it's always Pi is the username initially, and then RaspBerry is the default password for the Raspberry Pi. And real quick, we're going to do what it suggests here. We're going to do PASSWD so we can change our password. So we're going to put in the original, RaspBerry, and now we want to put in our new one. and it asks you for that twice, and we've changed our password so that it's not the default password and a little bit harder if somebody tries to access it without our permission, which is what we want. So now we're going to do ifconfig. So this is going to show us our interfaces. So right here you can see we have our WLAN 0, and that is 209, which is what we're connected on, which means our ETH1, our Ethernet or wired connection, is 210. So we want to connect through 210. So let's just real quick do exit, and we'll do SSH pi at 192.168.7.210. Now this one may give me a warning. Let's see. And it did, so that's okay. If you get this warning, just copy this line right here and paste it here, which is, it's nice that they give you this information, because used to they didn't. They just told you, yep, can't connect, too bad. And you had to figure out how to go get rid of that line. So it's nice to have that command right there. And then I'll just try this again. Yes, we want to connect, and we'll put in the new password we just made. And we're in. Now, first thing we want to do is follow those instructions that we talked about, and their instructions showed sudo apt update. And I believe they use sudo apt get update. Let's take a look. Yes, it is apt get update, but sudo apt update works the same way, and then they don't want us to use sudo apt get dist upgrade after that. So let's go do those. Alright, so we finished the update. Now we'll do sudo apt get dist upgrade. And we'll hit Y because, yes, we want to do this. And we'll let it run through here real quick. Okay, they're giving us some warning here about a change to the system. That's fine. I'm not concerned about it. So we're just going to press Q to quit. We'll let the install continue. Alright, so it did a lot of updates there. I did see a few kernel changes. I'm really particular about kernel changes. I like to go ahead and reboot. So I'm going to type in sudo reboot. And I'll tell you why. Whenever I see kernel changes, when I do any kind of updates or upgrades, you don't have to reboot right then. You could continue going. You could install the software you want to use. You could get everything set up and running. You know, just let it do great. And at some point down the road, if you happen to reboot that server, those kernel changes could come into effect where they hadn't yet. And those changes to that kernel could have a negative effect on the software you installed. So everything could have been running swimmingly. You went and rebooted, and now nothing works, and you're not really sure why. And it's because you forgot about those kernel changes that happened when you did that initial upgrade, or maybe you did an upgrade recently where that happened and you didn't reboot. So that's why I like to do it right after I do this step, just to make sure I'm not missing something really, really important. We'll give it just a second here to finish kind of the reboot, and then we'll log right back into it. Alright, I'm going to try to SSH right back in here. And it looks like it's back up and running. So we're going to switch back over to our instructions. And we did the reboot. And now we're going to do this localization option. So this isn't something that we actually have to do, but I want to go through it for you anyways. If you didn't do the initial step where we did the wpa-supplicant.conf file, you'll want to do this step for sure. So we're going to do this. We're going to set the localization for our Wi-Fi basically. Since we set it as our 2-letter country in that wpa-supplicant.conf, it's already set. But if you didn't do that step, you need to go into raspi-config and actually set it. And I like to go in there anyways and set my time zone. So we'll go ahead and go back to our terminal, and we'll get that set. So we will do sudo raspi-config. We're going to go to our localization options. So right here you can do change the Wi-Fi country. So we already have ours set, but we'll go ahead and set it again. And we are under U. So I am United States. I'm going to set that and hit OK. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm also going to go into localization options and I'm going to do change time zone. And I'm going to go up, for me, it's America. You would, of course, go to your continent. And then I am America, Chicago. So I'm going to move down here to Chicago. I'm going to hit tab to get to the OK and hit enter. And then I'm going to tab a couple of times to get to finish and hit enter. And I'm going to reboot one more time. Alright, let's see if we can get logged back in here. Alright, we are in. Let's go back to our instructions real quick. Alright, we've done those steps. Now we want to run the quick installer. So you're just going to highlight this command, copy it, and then you're going to go back to your terminal. And you can right click and paste, or you can do Control Shift V like Victor and paste. And we're going to run this. And right off the bat, it's going to ask you some questions. Basically, I'm just going to hit yes for every question that it asks me all the way through. I'm going to accept the defaults and everything. It's going to go out, grab some packages, pull some things down that it needs. Again, I'm just going to accept all of their defaults here as they ask these questions, but PHP config, yes. Session cookie, yes. RaspAP control services, yes. And then OpenVPN support, I'm going to say yes, and I'll tell you why when we get into the interface. And when you get done, the last thing it's going to ask you is, do you want to reboot it as a final step? And of course, yes, we do. So we're going to hit Y and enter. And we'll give that just a minute to reboot. While we're waiting on that to reboot, we can go look at our instructions again. And right here it tells us that this is what it's going to come up as the IP address for that Wi-Fi connection now. This will be our login username and password initially, so we want to change those. This is the SSID that you're going to be looking for in order to connect to it through a wireless connection. And then this is the password for that wireless connection. So this is some important information to have initially. We want to go in and change these things so that they're not the defaults, of course, but it's important to have this information off the bat. Alright, we've got everything set up, and now we want to actually log in to the Raspberry Pi access point. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. If you've got it set up where you've got the Ethernet going into it, it's still going to have that local IP address from your normal router. And then it also has this new address that's going to be from basically connecting to that wireless interface that it's telling you about. So first I'm going to go in through the normal router. Just because we can see a little bit more about what's happening without me getting cut off of the Wi-Fi, which is actually allowing my mouse and keyboard to work because I'm working through Barrier, which I've done a video on before, that shares my keyboard and mouse between two different machines. So let me get that set up, and we'll go in there. So I'm just going to go over here and open a new tab, and I'm going to go to the same IP that I've been logging into, 192.168.7.210, and you can see right away it pops up and asks for a username and password. So I'm going to put in admin and secret, and that's what those are. So out of the gate, you can either click here or you can click over here on the auth configuration option. They both go to the same place, and basically you can change that. So you can see here it's admin, we'll put in secret, and now we'll put in whatever we want for our password to be. And then we'll just save that change, and it's done. It gives you a little happy green message that you did it, so that's good. So we've got a different way of doing this, and if we go back to our dashboard, it's going to ask us to log back in. So now we put in the new password, and we're back into our dashboard. So now that I've done that, I'm actually going to go and change this up, and I'm going to switch out my keyboard and mouse for one that's connected directly to my machine that I'm working on, and I'll join that Wi-Fi network that's being presented by my AP so that you can see that. Okay, so we're going to go over here and we're going to just look at my Wi-Fi. You can see currently I'm connected to my own home Wi-Fi. I'm just going to disconnect from that one. It'll tell me I'm disconnected, and then I'm going to go look for RaspAP Web GUI. Now, I've logged into this one before when I've done this in the past, as I was kind of practicing and going through all the steps before I did this again. So it's probably already in the password memory. We'll find out here. Yeah, it is. So it connected already on its own, which is great. So now we can go here and we can actually load up 10.3.141.1. And there we go. So we're logged back in and we're on the Web GUI. Alright, so we can look at our terminal and we can just clear this out, and I can do if config, and I've got a lot of different adapters here, but what we're interested in is this one here, the WLP3S0, because why wouldn't that be what it's called? And here you can see what my IP address is, which is 10.3.141.107 in this case. So I am connected to the RaspAP Web GUI, which is great. So if we switch back over to the browser, we can see the Web GUI that we're running. And oops, I clicked on the wrong thing, but we go back to our dashboard. So there's a few things now that we can go through here and kind of check out and set up, and you can see I've got a couple of things that are actually connected to this Web GUI. So my iMac in the house apparently connected automatically on its own when it saw this signal, which is awesome. And then now my laptop is connected. So if I go down here and I actually say, let me look at the Wi-Fi information, and you'll notice it loads. It takes a minute just to load up here. So I'm not connected to a Wi-Fi network. So it's not acting as a Wi-Fi repeater. I have tried to get that set up in the past. I haven't had a lot of luck, but we may try it here again in just a minute. But the reason is that the Wi-Fi card inside the Raspberry Pi is acting like a Wi-Fi access point. So it's accepting incoming requests to connect to it. There is a way to do this, and you can put it in managed mode basically, but you need like a separate Wi-Fi USB dongle. So I may try that here in a minute. But right now it's connected to my Ethernet and it's acting like a Wi-Fi access point. It's not really a router, and I hate to call it a router because a router does something different. I am going to do a Raspberry Pi router with OpenWRT down the road. But right now, if you just need an access point, let's say you have your house set up, your house is wired, you've got wired Ethernet everywhere, it's a 3-story house, something like that, and your internet comes into the basement and your Wi-Fi just doesn't reach far enough. This is something that you can use, and you can just set it up for pretty cheap and go and actually create a Wi-Fi hotspot in your house. You could name it the same thing as your current Wi-Fi. It doesn't really matter, honestly. You can name it whatever you want. It just comes out of the box named RaspAP Web GUI, right? So just be aware, this is here. We may try to connect here in a little bit, but right now it's not connected, and you can see the little X here. It's not set. So we're going to go to configure the network, which is what we've been talking about, and right now you can see it's using WLAN 0, so you can drop this down and you can change which adapter it uses. If it's a wireless adapter, of course that's the one you want. You don't want to set this to use ETH0 because ETH0 can't accept wireless connections, so you want to leave it there. So here the SSID is RaspAP GUI, so I'm going to change this to RaspMac. And G, so I want it to be on N. Now there's rules about how you set this up under the security side, so be careful about this. The channel's fine for now. You do want to pick a channel that avoids a lot of the other network traffic in your area. So if you have a lot of Wi-Fi's set up in your area, a lot of them are probably on default settings, but you can find applications that actually tell you which channel those are using, and you can find a place where there's a dip so that you don't have so much noise, and you'd want to set that channel. I'm just going to leave it on 1 for now. It's fine. So we're going to save those settings, and it tells you when it saves, and then we're going to go to security here. You want to leave this on WPA2 at a bare minimum, so please don't put that at less than WPA2. When I talked about the N, if you're going to use Wi-Fi N, it has to be on this setting. I don't know why that is, but that's just in the documentation from RaspAP. And then here, of course, we want to change this to something else, so it's not the default. and we'll call it password 12, and then we'll save, and you'll notice it'll jump back to the basic tab here. That's fine. So when we talk about that managed mode, this is a place where you need to also set up some changes. So if you install another Wi-Fi adapter and you get it connected to a Wi-Fi and you want it to act like a Wi-Fi and AP at the same time, it's a Wi-Fi client in AP mode basically, you would have to come and enable this. So right now if I click it, it's not going to do anything because I don't have that set up. But then also there's logging, so if you set that up you can turn on logging. So there's a few things here that you can do. There's nothing here that we need to change, just wanted you to be aware of what that setting is. And then of course if you do turn on logging, this is where you would see the logging. So that's all set. So now you can stop the hotspot and start the hotspot. We're currently connected to the hotspot, but that's okay. So we're going to stop it. That's going to kind of disconnect us, so it's going to be hard to start it again. So you need to make sure you have an Ethernet connection to this device, because once it stops, we need to be able to connect through the other IP, which is through our Ethernet. Oh, and I need to connect to the correct Wi-Fi in order to do that, so you have to go switch back to your original Wi-Fi. Once you do that, and then you should be able to connect back to your hotspot, and we'll come down here to configure the hotspot here, and we want to start it back up. So basically this should take it and change it to what we said we want our SSID to be. It takes just a minute, give it a little time, and it should pop up with some messages that says it started the hotspot back up. There you go, you get about 4 little messages and it says hotspot up. So we're going to go and we're going to connect to our new SSID. So there's our new SSID right there in the list, and we're going to hit connect, and of course it wants our password. So type in that password that you set for that SSID and then hit connect. We'll give it a second. I know you're not seeing what I'm doing because I'm just getting the display here, but we'll go back and now we'll refresh, and we don't want to resubmit this, so actually just back all that out just till you're back to that IP address, and then hit enter, and it'll load back up to your dashboard, and you're back in, and you can go and actually check everything to make sure it looks right. So ETH0 is connected, here's the IP, here's WLAN 1 or WLAN 0, and there's the information for it, and you can hit refresh anytime you want to see that information. And then of course you can set up specific settings for each of those interfaces. So if you want ETH0 to have a static IP address, you can set that, and then down here you can set all of those values. WLAN 0, you shouldn't really mess with this one because it's already kind of acting as an access point, but if you add another WLAN and you want to use it for a different purpose, then you can switch those out and you can come set up those settings here. Each time you do that, you need to apply the settings, save the settings, and then you'll either want to stop the hotspot and restart the hotspot, or just reboot the Raspberry Pi, and it should kick in all of those changes. Alright, next is DHCP server settings. So this Raspberry Pi access point is acting like a DHCP server, so it's giving out addresses to machines that connect to it, and it does so within a certain range. So here you can see that range is from .50 all the way through 255. So below .50 is being reserved in case you want to set static IP addresses for some machines that connect to this access point. Pretty nice feature, pretty simple, but you can change these ranges if you want everything, then just set it from .2 up to 255, and that's fine. Again, you can set those, you can change those settings, but we're working with WLAN 0, so that's what we need it to be set for. So this is the part that's interesting, so that's why I let it set this up whenever we did the install. But OpenVPN is really a great tool, and I did a video a while back on PryTunnel. It basically lets you create an OpenVPN setup in the cloud, and it gives you a nice little web GUI to control that and set up the networks and the organizations and things. And then once you have a user set up, you can go and get configurations for that user. Once you have that configuration, you are able to go and actually get that configuration profile and download it, and then here you could say, you know what, bring in that profile for me and save it, and then connect up using OpenVPN. So now your access point is connected to your PryTunnel server in the cloud as a VPN, and any traffic that goes through it is going to be going through that VPN. That means that every machine that connects to this access point is now going through your PryTunnel VPN in the cloud. to me, that's pretty awesome. So I really like this feature. It's a beta feature, but it'll come into being where it's not a beta feature in the long run. So I think that's pretty great. Again, if there's log file output, you'd see it here. So if you're having issues getting it to connect for some reason, you might check the log file and see what's going on, and it might help you fix the problem. Alright, so remember I told you about auth configuration. That's where you click here, or you can click here and you can change the password for logging into the system and the username for logging into the system. You can change the theme, so I'm fine with this theme, but if you change it, you've got kind of an orange or pink there, and then you've got this kind of what they call terminal, which is dark with console type text, so that's kind of cool. And then you can come back to the light theme. Your data usage graphing is pretty nice, so this over time will grow and you can kind of see what the data usage looks like over time. Pretty useful. And then of course you can click on daily and you can click on monthly as time goes by to see what that data usage looks like. Finally, you get down to system and you can see how much system resource this is using. So right now it's using almost nothing really. CPU temperature is about where it always sits for a Raspberry Pi. CPU load is absolutely nothing, and using up the little bit of memory on a Raspberry Pi 3 that it's using is absolutely nothing. So this is an absolute great tool for a Raspberry Pi. You can see the language setting. You can go to advanced. Nothing really to change here, but this is just saying this is where this web server runs, is on port 80. It should be on your local network, and you should not be exposing this to the internet anyways. And then the console, if you need console access, you can also get it from here. And then finally, about RaspAP, just tells you what version you're running. It's kind of a normal about page that you would see. It's really cool. This is a really nice piece of software. I hope that you'll jump out there and get it and try it. I like it a lot. So before I finish up, I want to go back and I want to actually plug in my WLAN 0, or my WLAN 1 is what it's going to be. Wi-Fi card. So I'm going to grab this little USB dongle. It's by Edimax, and I'm going to plug it into a USB port here on the back. And we will let the Raspberry Pi have a minute to kind of realize it's there. And then we will go back up to configure networking and see if it sees it. Yeah, it does see it. Okay, but it's not setting it to anything yet because it doesn't really know what to do with it. So we can go to configure hotspot. We want to leave that alone. Probably configure network. But this isn't going to know which device to use. That's kind of the thing, is I don't see a way to pick which device it uses. So first thing I'm going to do is reboot this thing, and I'm going to go to system to do that, and I'm going to tell it reboot. We'll give it just a minute, and then we'll go back in and we'll make some adjustments here and see if I completely break this thing. Right now I'm able to get to the internet whenever it's up, and I'll show that before I make any changes just so you guys can kind of see that. So I'm waiting, and it just disconnected. Alright, I switched it so you can see what's happening. So up here at the top you can see the network. The wireless is not connected at this time. So we're going to give it a minute to reboot, and then we'll try to connect again if it doesn't connect on its own. Oh, there we go. So connection established. That's great. Let's go see if it connected to the one that we want. Oh no, it connected to my normal. Oh no, it did. Yeah. So it connected back to it on its own. Let's just do let's go back. And we're connected back up to it. Great. So I'm going to go over here to this version of it. And I'm just using it through the 192 that's on my Ethernet. And it tries to scan. Let's see if it can scan for other wireless networks. So that's what this does, is it scans for wireless networks. It finds this one because I set this one up through the supplicant, WPA_supplicant. So if I go here to networking, so now we can see that WLAN 1 actually has a 192.168.7 IP address. This still has the 10.3. So first, let me just show that I am still connected to the RaspMac, which is this hotspot. And I'm going to go to Google, actual Google. There it is. It goes. If I go to raspap.com, There it is, it goes. So I have internet connectivity because I'm connected through my Ethernet and through my through the Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the Ethernet cable on the back of the Raspberry Pi, and you would expect that it would just jump on its own to use the Wi-Fi connection from WLAN 1. I don't believe that's actually what's going to happen. So now if I hit Google, yeah, it doesn't go. It's going to spin and then it's going to give up here in a minute. Even though I've still got two connections, it doesn't automatically create that bridge between those two wireless networks. So they have some instructions. I'm going to plug the Ethernet back in so we can get to the instructions. Give me just a second here. Okay, so in their FAQ, they have this section that says, can I run WLAN 0 and WLAN 1 rather than ETH 0 for my AP? And they say, yes, you can do this. It's what they call managed mode. And they give you some instructions on what you have to change inside to make this work. So first we need to open up the terminal, and we're going to SSH in. There we go. So the first thing they want us to do is change a file, and it's in /var/www/html/includes config.php, and I just know because I've had to go find it. So cd/var/www/html/includes. And if we do ls, you'll see there's a file here called config.php, and we're going to do sudo nano config.php. And we are looking for the entry about Wi-Fi. So here it is, the RaspI Wi-Fi client interface. I'm going to change that to WLAN 1. Control O and Control X to exit, and I'm going to reboot. And you can see we're disconnected as it's starting to reboot, so we'll wait for it to come back up. And it shows that it came back up and the connection is established. So here it says we need to change this file as well. And this is the file where I find it to be a little bit off, but we'll go try it. So in order to do that, I got to plug the Ethernet back in. And we'll give that just a minute, and then we'll go and we'll check out our terminal. And we need to go and adjust, so nano/etc/dhcpcd.conf. And as you can see, this is already a very long, confusing looking file. But I'm going to add the lines that they say to add. So I'm going to do a Control-C to copy here out of the browser. That's what I'm doing. And I'm just going to do Control-Shift-V and paste it right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure there's a line underneath. And we'll do Control-O to save, Control-X. And then in the browser, they tell us to do one more thing, which is to restart the host APD service. So I'm going to copy that command. And I'm going to paste it in. So it's sudo systemctl restart host apd.service. See, it makes me nervous when it does that. Okay, took a little time, but it looks like it finished. Hopefully it restarted that service. It is on the RAS Mac thing. It's on the RAS Mac Wi-Fi. It is not connected to Ethernet on the Raspberry Pi. And I'll show you that. So let me actually just switch this over. I'm sorry you get to see this, but I only have one monitor. So we will come and I will do my best to show this to you without dropping the Raspberry Pi. But there's no Ethernet plugged in. So now let me get this back out of your face because I know that's going to be annoying to look at. And we're going to go back to the Chrome window here. and basically you can see that Google is up. So let's just show you that I can change the screen. We can go to YouTube and it goes. So now I've got a wireless repeater actually working off of my network, and we can go back to Google pretty easily here. But if I try to go to the actual wireless AP, when it's not connected to Ethernet, I can't get there anymore. So I try to go through 209, which is the Wi-Fi connection. That's not going to work. So let's go back and we'll do 10.1.3. Let's see, let's make sure I get the right one. 10.3.141.1. And it's going to try, because it kind of thinks it knows, like it's just like, hey, I know what you're trying to do. Let me try to get there. So let's try one other option. So let's just do if config. So this is an interesting interface. So this is my wireless interface being connected to that RaspMac. Now it gets this 192.168.50.77 IP address. This is odd, but that's what's making this work. So just click on Google, still loads. So I wonder if we go to 192.168.50.1. It does. Okay, so that'll get us into our console. And why it picked that IP address, I don't know. Let me put in the right thing here. And there we go. So we're back into our console here. I did want to show you, and let me switch the screen here. So putting in that IP address led us back into our console. So now we can come to the hotspot section. So this created a new interface whenever I turned on the wireless AP mode. If I turn this off, it's going to turn it back from an AP mode, and I would have to go undo all of those changes that I did in the text files there. So when we look at the network interfaces, we can see that there's this new UAP0. This is our bridged network, and that's what's giving out this address, this 192.168.50 address. Then we look down here at WLAN 0, and we see that it's getting the IP information from my home network. And then it looks like WLAN 1 isn't getting anything, but I do have it set up to be the one that's connected to my network. So it's an interesting and odd looking setup here, to be honest, but it appears to be working. It appears to be allowing me to get information from the network. So if I go back to my dash, you can see that I've got just this laptop that I'm on connected. What I'm going to do is connect with my phone. Alright, so I'm trying to join the Wi-Fi network on my phone. It's thinking about it. And it's connected. Now I'm going to go and start up my recorder here. Alright, it is recording my screen, so we will go into Safari. Here we are at Google. And we can just go look for something different. There we go. So Google's working. I'm still connected to that network, so I can show you that. And I'm on the RaspMac network. So this is working, which is kind of nice. And it wasn't too hard to set up. I have had to do it a few times to kind of convince myself how things work, but all of the steps that I've given you in the order that you've seen them, if you run it that way, everything should come up working properly. Alright, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get something out of it. It's a really great, inexpensive, easy way to set up a wireless AP network from a pretty inexpensive device, and it's actually really easy for you to get this going. So if you check this out, look at your system stats. I mean, this is still using almost zero memory, no CPU. The heat just hasn't really done anything different. So a really great way to set up an AP network if you need one. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe so that you can see more videos that are coming up in the future. I have a few more Raspberry Pi projects coming. I've got a few home automation things coming. All kinds of things that are self-hosted, open source, and ready for you guys to go get, grab, and use. So hope you enjoyed this. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.